So in terms of like going back to mindset a little bit, what do you think, if there is anything that you believe, what do you think is holding us back? Or like, what do you think are some mental roadblocks that still exist within our community?
Well, I'll say this, I think the black men are holding us back.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Ooh, that's a hot take.
Yeah.
Awesome. Welcome back, Ange.
Yes, we are back.
We're continuing our series around Black Money. I think we're calling it the Black Money series.
The Black Money series, yeah.
Black Money series. So this specific episode, we're calling it the Black Group Economics. So for people that are tuning in the first time, this is a Different World podcast, a podcast where we thrive on having disruptive conversations about sex, politics, religion, money, and pop culture, and everything else in between.
That's right.
And we have a distinguished guest here with us today. I'm going to let Ange introduce
Mr.
her.
Michael Forrest.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and hanging out with us.
Thank you, Angelina. Good to be here.
Yeah, for those people that don't know who you are, for the people that are not from Canada and have not been following your rapid rise with the organization, the Black Chamber of Commerce, just want to give a quick intro to who you are and what you do, and a little bit about the chamber.
Great. So Michael Forrest is my name, and I'm the founder and chairman of the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce. We started that 2 years ago in 2018, and we saw a void in the Canadian landscape to create a national economic engine that really tries to galvanize the Black community. And so we thought the Chamber of Commerce was the best way to start, to really try to become that first Black entity on a national basis in Canada that really tries to link the entire country from Victoria, BC, to Newfoundland as well. And so our goal basically in creating this chamber is to really grow Black business wherever it is across Canada, and really inspire Black ownership in terms of companies and ventures along the way, and really spawn more people to look at entrepreneurship as a career pathway as well too.
Yeah, one thing I like about what the chamber does is that they, again, use the power of numbers, and really try to get the Black causes into the political arena, the financial arena, and really make sure that we are taking our share of the pie, and our needs are being met.
Yes, definitely, and it's very important. I mean, taking our fair share is more than overdue for sure. I mean, we're 1.2 million Black Canadians in this country, and we need to find ways to make sure that we mobilize the communities that are in this great country of Canada. And I find that as we travel this country, we recognize that people are asking for and finding ways to be connected. We've had people inquiring and demanding chapters. One of our first requests for a chapter was in Saskatoon.
Wow.
Of all places, right?
Wow. And
so they recognize that they wanted to be along to the mother of the Black community, which is, I think when people feel connected that way, they feel more secure, and they're more safe, and they feel more, they have a chance to express themselves,
right?
And being just Canadians as we are.
Right. So how did you, this is like we've said, you and I have had conversations about this quite a few times, but this is long overdue.
Yeah.
We've had conversations throughout the community about the need to organize in this way.
Yes.
How did you do it when seemingly no one else could have?
Well, I think it's my learning, and I guess my journey started in the community meeting in 2005. Learning and going to different functions, the JCA, BVPA, all the legendary organizations that are across this great country in Canada, and being mentored and just learning exactly what are the challenges. And I think the need that I saw was, the opportunity was that I saw this country's missing and lacking a national Black organizations. And to this day right now, there has been no national Black organizations across Canada. Our goal basically is this, is to, by the end of the year 2020, is to be that official first organization. And to me, what it means is that you must have representation, physical space in every single territory, the three territories, and the 10 provinces across Canada.
Right.
If we're not able to do that, we cannot be the first national organization.
So, two quick questions for the listeners and the viewers that are watching or listening to this. Please describe what BPA you mentioned, and you also mentioned
JCA.
Yes. Yeah, two legendary groups in Canada. The JCA, the Jamaican Canadian Association, created in 1962. So it's one of the oldest Black organizations in Canada. The BVPA, it's called the Black Business Professional Association. 38 years old, 30 years of legacy in Ontario. So these are stellar organizations that across in Ontario where we live. There's also BBI, which is a Black Business Initiative in Halifax, Nova Scotia as well. One of the pioneers in really Black culture and maintaining our stay in this great country.
Right. Awesome. So I've been excited about this series. We've been actually been working on this in the behind the scenes for quite some time. And just for context, I just finished reading Malcolm X's book just a few days ago, actually.
Okay.
And I remember towards a few years before he died, a reporter asked him, can whites join your organization? And Malcolm X, he answered this question differently in different times of his career, and his most recent answer was, at some time, but not before my people have unification, unity, I will allow integration. So it led me on this thought journey rather. And so I want to ask you, what serves the Black community better, integration or segregation, and what are the pros and cons of each?
Great. I think segregation is not a good idea, first of all. I think even the word just meant to be separate from the main. It's not good for the global economy. To me, integration really means inclusivity. It could be definitely inclusivity within the Black community, inclusivity within the greater Canadian community as well too. But I think I believe in what's called shop local. Okay. Shop where you live. So whether it's in a Black community or a larger diverse community. But we should never lose sight of that the Black community for the Black culture must come first. And so, I remember a few years ago, my mother and I basically were looking for a vehicle, and we wanted to put pressure, we wanted to see exactly, and she worked for Ford Motor Company at the time, and we couldn't find any Black salespeople selling vehicles. And so we were trying to practice Black group economics as to trying to find someone that looked like us that we can actually buy from. And so we wrote a letter to Ford Motor Company, listen, why are there no Black salespeople selling vehicles to us? And so they wrote back and apologized, and just by bringing that to their attention, more people were actually hired in that particular dealership at the time and point. Because we made it very clear that, when you buy a car, it's the second biggest purchase you purchase after your home. So why not go the extra distance to make sure try and find someone that looks like you, because you can now impact that purchase and that person's household as well too.
For sure. Yeah.
That's a good point.
So, being Canadian, we oftentimes look to our big brother to the south as Black people, and sometimes we conflate like the Canadian Black experience with the American Black experience, but we know it's very different. Why do you think that we have arguably a more challenging time practicing that Black group economics in Canada versus the States? Do you think it's like, or even anywhere else in the diaspora, do you think it's our mentality, or is it just a numbers thing?
Well, I think if you look at the two economies, the American Black community, so over 45 million Black Americans, they've been there since basically the 1600s. In Canada, for example, yes, we've been here since that time period as well, but not in the same number of quantities, right? We look at Matthew de Costa, who's been here since 1529 in Canada, right? It was one of the navigators that basically traveled alongside Samuel de Champlain. He was a translator and a person that actually helped to navigate or translate between the First Nations and the Europeans. So that tells you that obviously for him to be a Black man in Canada, he was here much longer than the Europeans were. So when you look at our footprint in Canada, we have to recognize that we've been here for a very long time period. Yes, our greater population is more newer from the Caribbean and Africa as well too. But I think when you compare the two economies, America, for example, when you look at it, it's the Black economy. Well, America's the largest economy in the world. It's around $20 trillion worth of trade. Right? Compared to the nearest rival, China, which is $13 trillion. But when you look at the Black economy just by itself, and if you extract that, it would be the 10th largest economy in the world by GDP. Canada on the same scale.
Sorry, the Black American?
The Black American economy. When you extrapolate that from just the greater American economy, would be the 10th largest GDP in the world. Or the largest Black country type in the world in terms of the American Black population. Canada, it's the 10th largest GDP in the world at $1.7 trillion. So what we've recognized is that our American brothers and sisters are so close to us, but there's no trade relation between the Black Canadians and the Black Americans. So at our launch we had last year, we recognized that we need to tap into our big brothers and sisters south of the border,
Right.
and actually find a way to really, import more jobs into Canada, so we can grow our black population that is here, right?
Right. And how do you find, just even culturally, dealing with black business people or black people in Canada versus the U.S.? Or I know, again, there's a lot of initiatives that you have overseas as well with the chamber.
Yeah.
But what's the key difference you find in terms of their mentality towards business?
Well,
or is there a difference?
I find there's very subtle differences along the way. I mean, I worked for a global company, Chevron Texaco, for many years, where a lot of my contacts were in the States, and even in my current business, a lot of my clients and suppliers are American companies as well too. I think the commonality of English being the language makes it really, really borderless in my opinion, right? But I think, there's an opportunity for us to really, really grow Canadian content here as well too. And with the dollar being weaker than the American dollar, I mean, we need to find a way to how do we actually, a country is only as strong as the jobs it creates in manufacturing.
Right.
So one of the things we want to do in the chamber is find ways that how do we attract those large American black manufacturing firms, right, into Canada.
Yeah.
So imagine if Tyler Perry could actually create a small studio here
Right.
in north of the border as well too.
Right. Like take over the
Yes,
Vancouver.
just as what he's done in Atlanta, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've had this conversation. Like these conversations come up in like the barbershops and around my groups of friends, and I always find just at least the spirit of entrepreneurship seems to be greater south of the border. And I've had this conversation with a lot of my like American friends, and sometimes the feedback or response is, well, it was kind of born out of necessity. When you had a group of people that were marginalized and had to do everything on their own, which is why they have so many businesses. Obviously, beyond the fact that there's obviously more people in the United States. And so I guess like when I think of some of the struggles I've faced and other people that I know that are obviously of African descent, I just don't find like the spirit of collaboration is like it is in the States. Like I feel like I go down to the States and we have an idea, it'll move 10 times faster just because everyone's on that same wavelength. Whereas here, there's a few people for sure, don't get me wrong, but it's just not that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely agree with that. I think Canada's it's a much slower pace for sure. But I think we have always, even major Canadian companies, they recognize that no matter.
We're conservative.
Yeah, definitely. And the biggest market in the world is south of the border, so it's just naturally they'll move a lot faster because numbers really does move things along the way. And we're the second largest country in the entire world with one of the smallest population. So mapping who we are and where we live, that takes time as well too, right?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because to kind of go back to what we were discussing before in terms of segregation versus integration, the idea of trying to be segregated here in Canada is like you can't. You'll starve to death, right? Literally and figuratively, right? So it's kind of like we've come used to spreading our dollar to a broader audience or a broader market, whereas in the States or in the West Indies or in various African countries, spreading your dollar with your community is so much easier because your physical community reflects your cultural community. So
definitely.
You definitely see the difference in terms of the structure, the physical structure of our communities.
So I remember I had this conversation with this lady I met. She was from Chicago, and she was like, "You Canadians, especially you Black Canadians, love to eat up the whole multiculturalism, inclusive, and you love to eat it up." But she's like, "You don't realize that comes at a detriment that, what do Black people really own in this country?" Like, she's like, asked me, "Is there a prominent, successful Black neighborhood in the GTA that exists?" And I struggled to find one.
Not yet.
And so not yet, at least. And granted, we've at least from a Caribbean perspective, we've only been here since the 1960s, early 70s, if you will. But do you feel like the inclusivity kind of march theme is at a detriment in terms of us building our own? Do you think that impedes our growth a little bit?
I think it does to a great extent. I guess if you look and see where we're more inclusive, although we're not a large population, you'll see that we definitely do things on a cultural basis more than we realize. The concerts we go to, the foods we eat, the barbershops, the churches we go to, the mosques we go to as well too. we're still doing things on a cultural level as well too, right?
The commerce.
The commerce is actually because we're less than 5% of the population in Canada, right? We have to, by nature, make sure that we are integrating with other communities. But if I look at on a global stream as well too, if you look at Africa, I did a study to see exactly what is the GDP of Africa as a continent compared to the rest of the countries. And when I was quite surprised, it would rank as the entire continent of Africa, which is 1.3 billion people, right? It would rank the 11th largest economy by GDP in the world.
Wow.
Just ahead of Russia on its own. And behind Canada. So Canada on its own, just to put it in context and for the Canadians, Canada's economy is larger than the entire African global continent, when you're thinking of it, of 37.5 million Canadians compared to 1.3 billion Africans. But again, when you look at GDP, it's the ability for a country to produce goods domestically that they can also export as well too.
Right.
So Africa, of course, it's blessed with resources. It is the wealthiest continent in the world.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that continent sends most of the goods out of the country in raw materials. Well, too. Canada does a great job in sending things out of the country in finished goods, or at least near finished goods as well too.
Right, for sure. So with the Chamber of Commerce, you guys have your member base is filled with the business owners, professionals, and what have you. But Corey and I were talking about the fact that we see a lot of Black businesses kind of sticking to very specific segments.
Yes.
Right. So like the barbershop and the hair salons.
Jamaican food
store. The Jamaican
food store.
The restaurants. But the West Indian restaurants and stuff like that, or very service-based businesses. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think culture is some things that just naturally we go to things barbershop because we're used to it growing up, and we're people of pattern. People just we follow patterns, and I think for me, nothing like going to Eglinton Avenue West, getting a beef patty and a champagne cola. And that brings me back to my early days in Kingston Town. That's what we called it when I was growing up in Kingston Town. My mother would take us to Kingston, and the treat was always, before we go back to country, we get basically a patty in a brown bag, and so that was so that's why I think I'm personally drawn to cultural foods, right? And but I think, but beyond that, I mean, we have to find ways to tap into what I call the cornerstone industries such as farming, agriculture.
Right. Yeah.
Critical piece.
Which is interesting because Jamaica and Canada have an agreement where there's farm workers that come every spring.
Yes.
And that's been like that since
Wow.
Forever.
Yeah.
Really.
Definitely. And I think that's a travesty in Jamaica. I mean, if I go back to my Jamaican heritage, I remember Norman Manley, the premier at the time, he didn't want that to happen. He did not want to send his citizens into foreign lands to work the land and leave the Jamaican land totally not being cultivated.
Right.
So my belief in being Canada, for example, I came when I was a young boy, when I was 11 years old. But I want to see us move to the point where we're not working on the land, we're actually owning the land. And that's one of the things and we can't do that in Canada because we do have economic power, but we need to find a way to galvanize that as well too. Because to get an example in Peel, the majority of Black persons living in Peel are property owners. Really? And how do we actually move that particular segment of people to actually, start maybe doing group economics, maybe buying land in terms of holding it and holding for the future, right?
Right.
That's interesting. I really did not know that.
Yeah.
So what about other areas across the GTA? Like if you go out east, like because I know there's a sizable
Ajax and Pickering.
Ajax.
Definitely. I mean,
Durham.
Durham's also the same thing like Peel as well too. But I think Ajax in particular boasts a very, very large percentage of its Black community as being landowners, and they're quite proud of that as well. It's 15% of the Ajax population, and the reason why I know that we met with Minister Rod Phillips, he's from Ajax as well too, from Ontario, and he shared with us that the Ajax population is a very, very strong, sounded Black community, and so that's a great example for us to look at. And also Brampton's another good example of having a very sound Black population that owns land. Right?
But how do you make that translate though? Like that's the tricky thing because. Yeah, we do know many people that are house proud, that's kind of a part of our culture.
Yeah.
But like, how does it translate to generational wealth and security?
Great. I think personally, if you look at Peel, Peel is just west for those that are not in Toronto. I mean, Peel is just actually west of Toronto, city of Toronto, And if you look at the city of Peel as the region of Peel, it's got 3 cities: Mississauga, where we are right now, Brampton, and also Caledon.
Right.
And if you were to ask me which is the most important part of that particular region, I'll say it's Caledon. Because we have to find ways to allow to leverage that land for the next 2-3 generations.
Yeah.
And make sure you buy the land and let it sit and sit and sit for the next 50 years if you have to. So that when you now can actually, as population expands, as it sprawls outwards, you're now in the path of expansion.
And so to be clear, you say it's Caledon because the land, for what you can get for the land, it's more cost effective.
Oh, definitely.
It's less developed, I guess.
Less developed, and the square footage is a lot more as well. And it's also a place to really, in a sense, if we look at our South Asian friends, how they grew their economy out of the Malton region, in a sense, into the Brampton area.
Right.
They saw a way to expand from Malton.
Right.
And again, when you look at the black population and the South Asian population back in the 70s and early 80s, they were literally on par.
Right.
But if you look at Brampton as she expanded along the way, I mean, the South Asian community actually had a plan and set sail for it as well too.
And I actually wanted to bring that up because I was like, I was trying to think of a more politically correct way to ask that question, but I was like, how do we move in a similar fashion? Because I've been here since '88 and I'm 35 now, and I've seen the transition. I can remember living in the same, for lack of better terms, ghetto-ass buildings as my South Asian friends, and now I'm seeing them, and it's just like houses and streets, and just, you know what I mean? I saw, I've actually witnessed the progression, and I was just like, what are some of the steps that we have to kind of take to kind of get to that level when we're in different? You mentioned, I think you used the term cornerstones, where we're also into real estate, into politics, like yourself, into all these different various cornerstones in our society.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm not into politics. I'm just into Black economic movement. That's my main purpose and growth. But I think in terms of looking at what others have done well for themselves, we have to find our own way of doing it. They have their own way of doing it, because if you look at the South Asian community, and if we look in at our Jamaican community, our elders lived with us for a long time.
Yes.
But somehow we've forgotten that as we came to this new country as well too, right? But I think they're able to cohabitate for a lot longer time period. And basically, much like the Italian community as well too, a lot of my Italian friends, very few I know that rent properties. They all own, because they understand that when the next generation starting, you give a hand out and make sure that they're actually owning property at a time as well too.
Right.
But I think as a Black community, we have to make sure, recognize that we are great people and we're doing great things. And I just want to say as well, as Black Canadians, I think we're the most privileged Black people on the face of the planet.
Really?
Interesting.
By far. And if you're in, I think Canada's the greatest country in the world. And the reason why I say that is that we're so positioned well, because we're well liked globally as a country. We're from every single country around the world.
Okay.
And if the challenge for the chamber is that, how do we actually outreach to various cultures and say, how can the chamber help you create more trade with your homeland and bring more trade here? So the opportunity basically is, I call it really, there's mainstream which we all know, but Black stream, it is totally undeveloped, right? Totally undeveloped. So I like to share this example within North America, there's around 1.2 Afro-Mexicans in North America and 1.2 Black Canadians.
Right.
But how many do I know? None. And the reality is that that's an opportunity to trade between Black Mexico and Black Canada. So that's why I say we're the most fortunate group of Black people, and to those who much is given, much is received, much is demanded as well too.
Right. So to kind of pivot back in terms of the jobs and businesses that we own, is there an area, because again you're seeing it all kind of laid out there, is there an industry that we could tap into that's kind of like an unmined territory that can probably be the game changer for our community, or a set of industries, I guess you could say?
Well, I think it's hard to limit it to any one industry, but I think technology is an important area that we have to keep up with for sure. And I think land ownership is in terms of what we need to do. We need to definitely acquire more land, and we have an opportunity in this great country. In fact, you have two of the conquered peoples in the world: the First Nations of the Americas in Canada, and ourselves, being descendants of slaves, right? And so there's an opportunity for us to partner and ally with the First Nations of this great country to maybe potentially acquire land that we can maybe own along the way, and recognize that we need to become more of a rural people Because right now we're urban focus.
Right.
We need to definitely spread out this great country.
Right.
And own land. And when you own the land, for example, then you can start deciding exactly what particular industries you can get into as well too. So it's really hard to really narrow down exactly what industries I think the one area we need to really focus on is manufacturing.
Absolutely.
We need to definitely manufacture a lot more products
Right.
and really encourage people that, because when you make a product, that's your strength.
Right. And I want to talk. Now you're telling us and you're sharing with us the things we need to do. I want to even take it a step further and talk about like the mindset, because I have this book out on the table, not just for it to look nice, but I'll reach and get it. Powernomics. I don't know if you've ever came across it, but Dr. Claude Anderson, one of the things he said in his book is that whenever you're a minority within a country, you can't afford to have an individualistic mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like just in my personal opinion, that a lot of us here, we don't have that groupthink mentality. Not enough. It's not large enough. So, I mean, I assume that your initiative is trying to create like a snowball effect to force us into having that kind of groupthink kind of mindset. Would that be fair to say?
More than fair to say, and I just want to say that as Black people, I mean, we are not First Nations. We're First World.
Mm-hmm.
So we're the first people,
civilization,
exactly, on this planet. So the entire planet belongs to us to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
So as we build group economics within the Black
I like
community,
that.
we have to build global economics as well for the entire planet. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the calling on our souls is much different than any other person. So we can't afford to march to the European or the South or the Asian drums. We have to march to the African drums and reconnect back to who we are as a people. And
that's T-shirt printable right there.
Yeah. So
I gotta say that one again.
Yes, you can't march to the European drums or the
Asian drums, right? We have to march to the African drums.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah.
That's heavy. It's real. And I think one of the things that you talked about in terms of our community and like our coming together. You mentioned our coming together in a church, kind of religious environment. Now, again, Corey's on his Malcolm X tip right now with his Malcolm X.
Yeah, but I to clarify, because when you say that, it depends on which aspect of Malcolm X.
Fair enough, but let me finish.
Don't be like I'm out here trying to say kill the white man, because that's not what I'm saying.
I'm simply saying it because when we talk about a lot of these topics, again, because you talk about recently reading his autobiography and you got these dope ass glasses on and what have you. So, but one of the things that we could kind of pull from one of his many teachings, and the teachings as we can see from the Nation of Islam right now, is that group economics thing, that idea of like using our religious, our faith-based centers as a way to pull together and invest together. Do you see that still being a tool that we can use?
It is the single most
easiest place to start.
The faith-based community is the biggest segment of the Black community. Right. And as a chamber, one of our plan is that how do we actually approach faith-based organizations and see how do we bring entrepreneurship to the members of your faith-based organization by, let's say, it could be on a Tuesday or Thursday evening. How do we actually go in and help some of the members to, transcend their small business, or maybe you might find someone's making wonderful food all the time. How do we make sure to get them to the next level of maybe creating a business and start basically selling products and services? And I think when we do that, not only does the faith-based organization wins, because now you've got wealthier members that can tithe more to the faith-based organization as well too. But at the same time, now they feel that, so the chamber has to ally with faith-based groups, because again, we definitely want to make sure go where the members are, and again by also the cultures as well too. So if you're from the Somali community, we want to make sure that we can actually partner with those local organizations and say, listen, how do we actually help to move Black Canadians forward? Because at the end of the day, our children may be born here and they'll be Black Canadians. I may be born in Jamaica, but my children are basically they're Canadians. So that's why the essence of the name Black Canadians, because they're probably the majority right now. If you look at the total Black population, the persons that are born here are the majority of the Black community.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So in terms of like going back to mindset a little bit, what do you think, if there is anything that you believe, what do you think is holding us back? Or like, what do you think are some mental roadblocks that still exist within our community?
Well, I'll say this: I think the black men are holding us back.
Interesting. Ooh, that's a hot take.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to hear that. We gotta.
Can you say that again a little closer to the mic, please?
Yeah, now we're talking. Yes.
Our producer Safi is like, let me sit back down and continue.
Yeah. Well, see, first of all, allow me to say, Happy International Women's Day.
Okay.
For the entire day, the entire week, the entire year, forever, right?
God bless you.
So that's.
Don't know what we would do without y'all.
Definitely. Yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, my son asked me, Daddy, why do you always call countries by her, right? And I said, Xavier, well, it's birth,
yeah.
right? Motherland. We never hear about fatherland. It's always about motherland, right? So, and the reason why I say about how to move the black community forward, it's really through the black male, right? And just look at the Christian perspective again. The black male has been neutered for a very long time period. And we have to find a way to make sure that we can definitely begin to empower black men to take the rightful place as leaders again. So if you look at, in our Christian beliefs, we are taught that the man is the head of the household, right? Like, not my belief, but that's what we're taught. And if you're the CEO of a company and the company fails, then whose fault is it?
CEO's fault.
Exactly, not the employee's fault, the CEO's fault, right? So the success must go through. So if you're the so-called leader of your community, we have to find ways to move the community forward as well too. And that's why you found that the black male has been totally cut off at the knees. If you look at the jail population, the second highest amount of black population in the Canadian jails are black men.
Second highest.
Second highest.
After
First Nation.
Yeah.
And we don't account for more than 3.5% of the entire total population in Canada.
That's crazy.
But yet still we are the second highest black jail population in Canada. There are other factors as well too, that I think personally, is that we're so caught up in our Eurocentric way of thinking as well too, right? I mean, I carry my slave master's name, Forrest, very proudly. And so who do I give glory? And what first thing I did when I became a father, I gave my children my slave master's name. So I think we have to recognize, like the bird Sankofa that looks back all the time, but keeping its feet on the ground safely planted, we have to recognize that we are children of the slaves, but then are we brave enough to face the changes and make the changes along the way, right? Which means that simply we have to reclaim our languages, our customs, and our names. What's in a name? What's in a name? It's actually, everything's in a name.
Yeah.
Your entire DNA, your entire history is in a name as well too.
Right.
And when we look at the fact of Western slavery, our entire names have been cut off from us, that we can't even find them. Right? So we've got to make sure, put it back together as best we can. And if we can't put it back together, recreate something that's different.
Right.
But we're still stuck in this bubble of enjoying our slave masters' names, right? Living slave masters' house still, but not by our own means along the way.
Right. So what would you say step one is? Would you say it's like understanding that heritage or reclaiming the name, or what's the next easiest step we can take? Or maybe not easy, but what's the next step?
I think it's step one is really being proud of who you are as a black person and some of your heritage, right? And where you come from. And I think Black History Month it's a phenomenal step, of course, right? Because you see everyone's actually, it's mandated into law. And so in Ontario, for example, and in Canada, we should definitely utilize that platform to make sure that we celebrate ourselves. This past February, there's so many things to go out and celebrate. And I did as president of one of the schools, and it was a Catholic school, and the majority of kids were non-black. So I had to make it relevant, and recognize. So I recognize that the history of the black community is also the history of the white community as well too, because they also need to be relieved of their atrocities they perform in black communities as well too. So then I was able to make the presentation relevant as to, it's about humanity being a better place than it is right now.
Now that's a good point about the names, because a few years ago I just had this kind of like revelation, if you will, that I was like, I remember in junior high school, when there'd be like a new kid that comes to school and he was like from like West Africa and everything, people would be teasing him about his name and all that. And I was like, years later, I was like, but I'm the one with the slave name now. I was like, and then, so it's just like I came to this moment, but like he has the authentic original name. I have my last name
Someone
is
else's.
Roberts. It's
Yeah.
Scottish.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, man, that's there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah, definitely. I know my daughter said to me, she said, and this is when I realized it was real, the change comes through the mail. She said to me, Daddy, you know what? That's not my concern, because when I get married, I get my husband's name. So if the male change their names along the way, then naturally, as we tend to realign ourselves in the Western structure, right? Although we're definitely African people for sure, where the matriarch is the center of our community. But since we're living in this Western construct, when you get married, you take on the male's name typically, right? So then, how do we actually make sure adjust our male? Because if we align our male, for example, to take the rightful place as protectors and providers, then our community will definitely be more sound along the way as well.
Right. And so, do you? I know I kind of threw this in one of our questions earlier about, someone challenged me on, is there a affluent black community in this country? Do you feel like that's close? Like that's nearby? Do you think that's
there are a lot of wealthy black people in Canada, in Toronto.
Right.
They're very quiet, very, very quiet. But they are there. They definitely are there for sure. And part of the chamber's goal is that we have to connect a purpose and a cause to their money as well too. So they can actually recognize that. And other people, they're very smart people.
Right.
If they see something they can relate to along the way, they will definitely invest in it. It can be on a very private, quiet basis. Right. But they're also very passionate about being black. That's what I'm finding as well too.
Right. Because I would love to see a rich black neighborhood one day in this country. Something you can point out to. Like when you say, the Jewish people live here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I can't think of that right now. And maybe I just don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, because when I think, obviously, I don't want to use the states, but it's easy comparison. You think of places like Prince George County or something, which is in Maryland, where you have a lot of affluent black people there that are involved in politics because it's close to DC and things of that nature. But I that would be my before I take a dirt nap, if you will. I'd love to see like an affluent black neighborhoods. Many affluent black neighborhoods in the GTA. I know they probably might exist in Nova Scotia, but I'm not sure.
And even Nova Scotia, it's a very small black community. It's only 5% of the black population.
Yeah.
Although it's very historic and very legendary.
Yeah.
It's a very small population.
Yeah.
But I think before I take my nap as well too, I'd like to make sure that we are planting seeds, whether it's by acquiring land so that our grandchildren can actually recognize and start building on it as well.
Yeah.
Orma Dante, just north of Barrie, is a great example, right? The land that was set aside during the Civil War for Black Canadians. But we have to recognize that we have to get out of this urban center, those that can, and start looking at how do you create a black civilization, a black city, right? Well, it requires first you to buy the land. And a friend of mine told me that a little while back. So that's the best thing to do is when you acquire the land, the first thing you want to do is build their graveyards in the land. Graveyards. It's like graveyards. Well, if you build the graveyards, eventually you have to go there eventually, right? Because now you're planning in reverse. You're buying plots of land, and you're like in Jamaica, for example. There's a Chinese cemetery, and they plan for themselves. So imagine if you bought land just north of where we are, for example. When someone passes on, you may go to the cemetery once a month, right? But you go there now, for example. So the first thing you do is put in your cemetery, and eventually, if you can attract, let's say, a black manufacturing firm, let's say from our big sisters and brothers south of the border, drop it somewhere mid-north Ontario. And what's going to happen then next is that the next thing that goes in is more now housing will come in after the jobs go in. A good example is Walkerton, Ontario, where Energizer put up a factory there. They became a one particular manufacturing company town. Campbell Soup, same thing in Listowel, Ontario as well. So when you can attract those large American manufacturing firms into, let's say, rural Canada, naturally the black population will then go with that particular company. And because now you can actually dictate exactly the people you can actually hire for the company. And it might mean actually also encourage more migration of black Americans south of the border into Canada. Because we need to grow our black population, because our black population is actually on the decline compared to other groups as well.
Interesting. And why is that?
Well, I think Canada likes to make sure migrate people with money. That's the political way of things, right? And they want to definitely keep this country more Eurocentric.
Yeah.
But if we have economic clout, America, for example, and Canada's got very, very great trade immigration relationships. So why not find a way to attract more Black Americans into Canada to stay here long term? We've seen people like Pinball Clemens, who's declared Canada as his hometown, right? So if we can do that more for ordinary, regular people all the time, to start looking at coming to Canada, especially with the economic climate right now, south of the border, we should be climbers. Hey, come, listen, don't worry about it. Come north of the border, and find some peace on the side of the border, right? And grow our Black economies along the way, because we need the American dollars here. And when they come, their family's going to come follow them as well too.
Right. So thank you so much. You dropped some heavy duty nuggets for us. Gave us a lot of information. I just want to summarize. Tell us again, what exactly, if someone's looking to be a part of the Chamber of Commerce, what kind of membership are they?
Yeah.
What are they going to get for their membership, essentially?
Definitely. So if you want more information about the Black Chamber of Commerce, the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce, blackchamber.ca. And I always say, if you're looking to start a business, you can definitely go to a Board of Trade or a Chamber of Commerce, no matter where you live, or in any enterprise center as well too. The Black Chamber, for example, wants to help you start a company,
right?
And you'll get a lot of advisor service. You get a mentorship for sure, because one of our beliefs is that in fact we have actually been able to. We do have a staff in place, and as a member, you get 4 calls per year. And if we don't call you, we're not doing our job. Meaning that we want to make sure exactly, ma'am, sir, how can we be of service to you? It could be that maybe you're looking for access to capital. Maybe you look for suppliers or clients, or maybe you want to make sure improve your marketing strategy as well too. So our members themselves come from all those industries. So as a member, imagine if you're a sales guru, we want to put you in front of the clients so you can actually teach them how to sell. If you're an accountant, we're just coming out of, we're now in tax season. We'll make sure that you can actually give free tax seminars, and by doing that, you in turn may pick up a client along the way. Definitely one of the things that the Chamber does, I just want to say, first of all, the youth memberships, if you're under 24 years old, you can join for free. Now, when Barack Obama came a little while back in January, we actually sent around 200 youth under 30 to Barack Obama, free of charge. Because we also find a way to collaborate and partner with other groups like the Economic Club of Canada, and get the tickets to see Barack Obama. If you're over 65 as a senior, your membership is free. Everyone else in between, unfortunately, you got to pay. Someone's got to pay for the bulk. When you get to be an elder, then it's free at that point in time. And so we definitely want to encourage. And membership is very, very, very nominal. As a startup, $75 only to become a member. If you're looking at getting entrepreneurship, as a small business, $250. And you're getting a lot of information, a lot of wisdom, a lot of networking as well too. And for it's more of a medium-sized enterprise, maybe $500 per year. But again, the pricing is not even a major factor. If you're looking at starting a business, you have to invest into yourself and into your company as well too.
Yeah, of course.
And you guys do tons of meetups, and you're pretty much involved in almost everything that happens within the Black community. I mean, I get the emails, so there's the film festival and a ton of different events that happen throughout the year that the Chamber is there and gives an opportunity for its members to be present also.
Definitely. And I also, we're like the artist Pitbull. We love to collaborate. We love to collaborate because at the end of the day, we see there's an economic engine that drives everything across the channel along the way. In fact, we've actually partnered with First Fridays, one of the legendary organizations there in Canada, Warren Simon, for example, and a group called African Caribbean Network in Brampton as well. So we're demonstrating that Black leaders can get together and collaborate and do what's best for the Black community, because at the end of the day, we're here to service the Black community more than that's where our client is, and so that one day we can become clients of our services. We definitely offer back to the Black community as well.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for coming by on a Different World podcast. We're humbled and honored to have you, and hopefully you come back.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
Maybe the next time when I come back, I will have found the courage to do what I think all Black men should do, which is really change our names. Maybe a year from now, I'll be sitting here as Mayaka Al Nayaka Katembe. You see, I do know the name, but unfortunately, I lack the courage to jump.
I was just gonna change my last name to X.
Well,
can I do that? No.
Whatever the meaning is, right?
I can't.
Yeah.
Okay. Be out.
All right. Thank you so much.